I used to live in a place called Dunfermline. This was when I was in primary school. And there was one day in the year I particularly loved, and it was actually a school day. There was a parade that paraded through the streets of Dunfermline down to Carnegie Glen, which was a big park at the bottom of the hill. And this was a day where there was all kinds of fun and entertainment, and first of all, a big march to be part of. So we turned up at school as usual, but we were only in there for a few minutes, and then we were up at the top of the hill, gathering with the other children and getting ready to march down the hill. And while we were there getting into our places, the teachers would come round and they would hand out wee flags for us to wave. There were two kinds of flags. They were both Scottish flags, but one looked like this, and it was a red lion on a yellow background. The other was a flag of Scotland, the blue flag with the white diagonal cross. Now they were two fine flags. By the way, they were small flags. They weren't as small as this. They were just the right size for kids to wave. And the teachers would hand out these flags to us. And I liked them both. My favourite was the one with the lion, and I always hoped I would get that flag. And if I didn't, I'd try and swap with somebody else so I could wave the lion as I was going down the street. And then we would set off, and there was an awful lot of fuss made of us, with people lining the streets. There were folk leaning out the windows from above the level of the shops. They were quite high up, and they were cheering and waving us on and giving us encouragement as we all marched down to the street, to the park. Now, I liked the day a lot. It was a great day. It always seemed to be good weather, and it was great not being in the classroom and having to do work. But one thing that I never quite understood about it was why we were doing it. What was it all about? What was the point of that day? Why were we waving flags? And what was the point in having just one day at the park? Why didn't other schools have this and the other towns as well? I never really knew what the parade was about. Turns out, I still don't know, but I do know that in Dunfermline, right up to this day, every year there is a children's gala day. So it still goes on for the kids in Dunfermline. Today we think about another parade, and this is a parade of Jesus and his friends coming into Jerusalem, which was the big capital city in the country where they lived. And it was a big event. But nobody knew that that was going to happen. This wasn't a date in somebody's diary. There weren't posters up all around the town telling people there's going to be a big parade. There was no TV or radio telling people. Nobody organised games and entertainment in the park. And nobody handed out wee flags for people to wave. In fact, it was a parade that just suddenly happened. And in fact, when people found out about it, they weren't necessarily prepared. They didn't have anything to wave. And so it's said that some of them gathered up some palm leaves that had fallen on the ground and started waving them. And I guess some even pulled branches off the trees so they could do the same thing. And that's why this day is called Palm Sunday. It's got nothing to do with the palms of our hands. It's palm trees. So what was it all about? Jesus was coming into Jerusalem, which was the biggest place, and he was going to have a chance to speak to the biggest amount of people. But it was also a dangerous place for him to come to. There were people who liked him, people who loved him, people who knew him. There were people that had met him before who maybe he'd helped, maybe he'd healed someone in their family. There were those who were very keen to hear more from Jesus, more of his stories and more of his teaching. And there were people who didn't really know very much about Jesus at all, who probably just came out on that day just to have a wee look because they'd heard about him and they knew he was quite famous, and so they just wanted to see what he was going to do. And then there were people who didn't like him, who were not on his side. So that would include the Romans, because the Romans didn't want anyone to become too popular. The Romans didn't want there to be a new hero, because that might be someone who'd be a rival to them. And then there were the religious people who Jesus didn't get on too well with because he didn't keep all their rules and commands, and Jesus would sometimes say things about God that were new to them and they weren't too keen on him. And then there were the wealthy people, and a lot of them had trouble with Jesus because he was always telling them to think about their wealth and to think about sharing their wealth with people that weren't so well off. So it was a very interesting crowd, and it was quite a dangerous place for Jesus to be. One thing I think was clear about Palm Sunday, and that was that when Jesus came into town, people could just sense that something was going to happen, something big. It might be something brilliant, and it might be something terrible, but something would happen. Things wouldn't be the same again. And of course, as the week went on that followed this, lots of things did start to happen. At first it seemed okay, and then it seemed that things weren't going very well. And then it seemed things were going dangerously wrong. And then it seemed as if it might just be the end for Jesus. And then, just at the last moment, when it just seemed like there was no hope, Easter came along. And of course, Easter changed everything from despair to joy. So we'll be hearing about the Easter stories in a wee while. But today, we think about Palm Sunday, and we give thanks for that Palm Sunday parade and the great courage that Jesus showed in coming into Jerusalem when it was so dangerous. It was a real place of danger for him, but he was determined not to stop doing what's right and to continue to share the great message of God's love. So today we give thanks for the bravery of Jesus.